Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com with this week's episode of the Market Monday. So today I'm just going to talk about War of the Spark, the hype that is surrounding War of the Spark, and why I think that it is a bad idea to be investing in this set, including sealed boxes of this set. Now, let me preface this with saying that this is by far the most of a set that I've ever had pre-ordered. Locally as well as for my patrons. What I do for my patrons is I allow them to order at distributor price. And usually standard sets are pretty much lackluster in my community. You got to think a lot of my patrons come from more of the MTG finance, more of the outside the box thinking demographic, and not really the casual crowd that just wants to throw money whether or not there's value in the set. So War of the Spark, having that such a strong pre-order price, is actually very telling of where I think the set is going to end up. Now, you got to remember, I try to beat this into everyone that watches this channel, that popularity sometimes does not equal having a good return on the, in fact, probably the opposite. It's one of the things I'm actually looking at the Commander 2018, since it had such dismal sales, that it might actually be something long-term that holds its value and continues to go up. Now, something as popular as this set can actually be its own undoing, and the prices can crash. It's kind of the same theory I had with Ultimate Masters. The Ultimate Masters would be sold very, very quickly. It would bottom out in price, and it would take longer to recover than something like Iconic Masters or Masters 25, because those were kind of the dud sets. And if you actually come over here and look at that, that's exactly what has happened with both of those Masters sets. So the Iconic Masters and the Masters 25 are currently outpacing the Ultimate Masters. So Ultimate Masters is pretty much flat. It's been flat for a while. It has started to have a little bit of increase. There's the Modern Horizons that's upcoming that will spike the value of those. But look at the Masters 25 and Iconic Masters. These things were not even close to being able to open up at the TC market price and get your money back as far as singles were concerned. Now they actually are pacing exactly with the going price of sealed product. Now, these were sets that I could get for a long time. It took Iconic Masters probably the most time a master set's ever taken to hit out of distributor price, and now we're starting to see it in between distributor and the MSRP that they set for the set, and it's actually quickly approaching the MSRP. And yes, there have been other sets that do break this rule, like Battle Bond was very popular. It sold like crazy, and Battle Bond has been going up in value, close to it's almost MSRP, which is crazy for a set that is this new to be able to reach that. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. What I want to do is just try to give the example that sometimes a set being sold poorly is what it has going for it, and sometimes a set that is sold like crazy becomes its own undoing. And what I really want to focus on is Dominaria. So you get Dominaria here, and you can see that Dominaria absolutely follows this trend. Dominaria is out of stock. I cannot get this from any one of my 3 distributors. It's long gone. Wizards is said they're not going to do another print run. Most likely not going to do it with Dominaria. And the booster boxes are hard to come by, yet the set EV is absolutely dismal. $58.60 for market value. This is about as low as sets that just rotated out. If you have the invocation prices of Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation, is not that much far off. And the Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan is worth a lot more than Dominaria. So Dominaria being a very popular set that people continue to buy, whereas Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan being very lackluster sets that people have forgotten about, you can see the price discrepancy between the two. If you actually go back, Dominaria is now below Kaladesh, which had a very, very low EV for quite a while, and you can even see it's even lower than like a box of Journey to Nyx or Theros. So War of the Spark, I think, is going to follow a very, very similar trend as Dominaria. Dominaria had an okay set EV or box EV when it came out the gates. I remember it was around $100, and it did sell. It did break records apparently, according to Wizards, if you trust the camel's mouth, that the Dominaria was the most attended pre-release of all time. Guilds of Ravnica, I believe, was second. I don't know if it beat it, and at least pre-release on that metrics, they've beaten even the glory years of Magic the Gathering, which I like to call Return to Ravnica, all the way through. I would say Journey to Nyx was the real glory days of Magic. It started petering off around, I would say, Dragons of Tarkir, and then it really started to slow down with the Battle for Zendikar and Oath of the Gatewatch, and all the way through, I would say, all the way up to Dominaria, we saw kind of a stagnation and a slow trickle out of the player base. Core 2019 was one of the most dismally attended sets for the pre-release, and I believe that was right after Dominaria. So there's been some awkward things with this time period of Magic, one being one of the most attended, one being one of the least attended, and those things seem to level out. So anyway, War of the Spark will be coming out, and the anticipation for the set is just through the roof. The trailer for the War of the Sparks went viral. We have a lot of the people in the community that are very, very excited and very pumping this set, and it feels like Dominaria all over again. Remember, Dominaria was the big return, the big nostalgic set. Back, a legendary creature in every pack. War of the Spark, they're actually following that sort of strategy and putting a Planeswalker in every pack, and I think the casuals are just going to come out in droves to attend this pre-release, to buy those booster boxes, and to crack these packs for Planeswalkers. We also have arguably the best of the buy a box promos ever. See the one out of the take extra turn. I can't think of the stupid band card now. Nexus of Fate. When it came out, it wasn't really highly anticipated. It took a while for that to actually make a tier deck. And the Tezzeret Master of the Bridge, though, this card has been crazy for the people that want it for EDH, for the people that think it's actually modern or standard playable, and just some crazy wacky combos that can be utilized with the Tezzeret Master of the Bridge. So that is pre-selling for $50. According to Mark Rosewater, these buy a box promos, they actually exist in higher quantities than any other mythic, and if this thing can hold steady at that 50, that of course is just going to make all the pre-release boxes just completely sell out very quickly. It will inject a lot of supply early into the supply chain, and it will affect the rest of the cards when you have a $50 guaranteed from those buy a box promos. So that's another thing that War of the Spark has working against it. So my advice to everyone is to not order this set. Now, I know we are trying to push it on my Patreon because the more booster boxes we order from particular distributors, the better discount we have, and we're all collectively trying to get around these booster boxes. But this is a set that I think that I'd personally avoid and just buy the singles when the dust settles. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of hype around these cards coming out. This does seem to be a very, very powerful set. The power creep of this set is just absolutely ridiculous, even in the commons and uncommon slot. They are trying new things they've never tried before with static abilities on Planeswalkers, and this could shake up a lot of things. Even Legacy, Standard, Modern, all of them could be quite substantially shaken up, and usually that leads to a set holding a lot of value. However, again, we're going to look at Dominaria, and I think that this is going to follow a very similar trajectory. So right now we see a lot of mythics and rares, mythics over 10 and rares over 5. If you come over to Dominaria, this is literally where the dust starts to settle. We did have some good ones out the gates, like Lyra Dawnbringer, sold quite highly when this set came out. So did Mox Amber, so did Karnan, so did Teferi. All these are staying pretty good. But when you have the mythics that hold this much of the set value, something has to give, and in this case, it was the rares out of the set that just completely got crushed. Now, this set didn't have necessarily bad rares. Some of them were a little bit lackluster, but we did have two goodies in the form of the commander staples of the Helm of the Host, and then there was another commander staple with the land. They also did have a good sell. The wannabe, what's the land called? It's around this area here. Allows you to, there it is, Cobble Stronghold allows you to tap for each Swampy Control, and you can see just how far these prices have fallen. And when a Cabal Stronghold, I believe, sees a EDH rating of whatever, it's 2,827 decks, but can't crack $1, and you compare that with Helm of the Host, which is only $4 with a whopping 5,000, and there's been very few cards in the history of these more recent sets that have had such a demand like Helm of the Host has. Smothering Tithe has from Ravnica Allegiance, and it's already up to around the $11 mark. So that just shows you just how crazy the supply of Dominaria does. And in my opinion, this one is going to follow a very, very similar path as Dominaria. This set will also be open in those spring to summer months before Magic starts to have its more stagnant time period. Now, Magic tends to suffer about late summer all the way up until fall. That's when those sets, that's the core 2019, those type of sets sell quite dismally. But if you remember Dominaria, that was the set that I believe was being, yeah, it was because that was the PTQ that I played in at Vegas. So we're thinking that Vegas this June as well it will still be the War of the Spark that's going to be drafted at high quantities in that, and all those things actually add up to the supply chains, because what I've heard is those sometimes at Grand Prix they add. When we were looking at the Modern Masters 1, it was like a huge significant portion of the Modern Masters 1 supply was opened at the Grand Prix. And I'm not saying that that's the same thing for Dominaria, but that is a lot to inject into the supply. Having a set like this is going to be opened and drafted for quite some time before we get the next set, which is going to be a core set, which might be lackluster, which will mean this will be continued to be opened instead of the core set. You never know, though. They might go all out with the core set. This time, we also do have Modern Horizons coming in later on. They might affect the prices of War of the Spark. But as of right now, War of the Spark is just looking to be one of these sets that, regardless if it holds value, the same thing with what happened to Dominaria, regardless of how it comes out the gates, it will continue to sell. And again, that's what I want to say. Dominaria was nothing special as far as the set EV. You can see it bottomed out quite quickly. It went below that $100 where it's worthwhile to open up a booster box very, very quickly. When rotation happened, it was the least worth set, even below Core 2019. Core 2019 has since passed it as lower value EV. I believe Core 2019 is very, very dismal. If we go over here to Dawnglare, yeah, it's 4810. So it's not too far off of the Dominaria at 5730. But I remember, I think that these had like they leapfrogged each other at one point with Core Set 2019 just having a lack of supply. Now, Core Set 2019 is just, that's how dismal the set is, where it can't even break about $50 with also having the very, very low supply. But again, that's a rant for another day. Looking at War of the Spark, I think it's going to follow a very, very similar trajectory as the Dominaria. It should be a large set just like Dominaria. I believe we'll have the exact same amount, and it can come out the gates at this high pre-sale, and it's just going to dip very, very low. And this one, it actually didn't happen in too long. It took about, so the release of it happened on May, and by end of June, it pretty much have bottomed out. So May, June, just 2 months basically, and this set hits the bottom. Guilds of Ravnica actually stayed a little bit longer at set, basically it's set, or at box EV. Yeah, if we're looking here, it released right here, and you can see how long it actually held its price. Until about Ultimate Masters is when it came down. If we actually look over at Guilds of Ravnica, still holding decently strong at 73, worth quite a bit more than Dominaria. This was recent too. You can see not just a few weeks ago, it was all the way up to 80, 81 at market price. Ravnica Allegiance has been falling quite quickly with not too many of the cards. That this set also was opened up like crazy, and you can see the same effect that happened where it just got obliterated after, people. The set EV of this one was absolutely crazy when it first came out, and I think that between Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance and that time period when Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan and now even Battle Bond, I think that we might see a resurgence of the box openers again. Box opening was a very lucrative thing for people. It never was the best. I mean, you're looking at minimum wage by the time you do it, but some people enjoyed it. And there are other people too that I know that would crack boxes, and their profit margin would be the foils. So they'd just crack box after box after box after box, break even and keep all the foils, and then, collect foils and later down the road sell foil sets or sell the foils 2-3 years down the road to make their profit. And that is, if people find it cathartic, if people like in doing it, if they enjoy doing it, then there will be that pressure from getting into supply for the people that like doing those sorts of endeavors. However, box openers, at least on the mass scale, they pretty much disappeared after Kaladesh because it became so unprofitable to go down that road. And one of the things with that was the masterpieces. The masterpieces just continued to have people searching for those masterpieces, and it just crushed the value of the booster boxes or the contents of the booster boxes to the point that no one could really break even. You had to is either get lucky with an expedition or a masterpiece or bust. And with these type of sets, after the masterpieces had, if they've given up on them now, they'll definitely will be, indefinitely be a return of them, in my opinion, in sometime in the future, especially when they need to sell. It may be a dismal set. Maybe they'll start putting on core sets to have them sell. We should see them come back. For us now, they're banking on just actually regular old magic to sell the booster boxes, and the Wizards is starting to learn the lesson. They can't be doing these things, especially with Hour Devastation in so many sets in a row of having these sort of masterpieces and expeditions. So anyway, so where do I think this set will fall? I think it will be exactly like Dominaria. Right now we have a $20 Mythic or $20 Rare. That is big time wishful thinking. There's a lot of hype around Teferi Time Reveler with it just being insane in Legacy control, as well as in Modern as an actual playable. Until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells with Low-Ed Flash, so you can use it on your opponent's turn to do stuff, and then you can return up to one target artifact, creature, enchantment to its owner's hand and draw cards. So every few turns, you get some card value back from your graveyard to your hand, and then you can each opponent can cast spells only in time they cast sorcery. Okay, so it shuts off counter spells also on your turn. So people are thinking this is going to be very, very viable in both of those Legacy and in Modern formats. And of course, there is people that are purchasing it like crazy, pre-ordering it like crazy, thinking it's going to be that good of a card. Well, there was another card that had that much anticipation. That was Assassin's Trophy. Assassin's Trophy came out the gates as also selling for a $25 card. I actually remember having these arguments with people that this card cannot hold. No matter how popular it is in all of these formats, there's no way they can hold. So that's kind of my baseline. For Mythics, unless it is a 4-of that sees play in both Modern and in Standard, like we saw with Arclight Phoenix, I think that a Mythic holding over $20 is wishful thinking, and I think a Rare holding over $10 is wishful thinking. So there will be a lot of room for these cards to go down. We're already seeing a lot of these cards go way down in value just because people have done the math and realized that the EV is going to be insane if cards actually do come out at this price point. We still have the set to be fully spoiled. There are a lot of uncommons and commons in this set that will indefinitely hold value, and this is looking out to be a good booster box to purchase in anticipation of actually opening it for value. But like I said, this often has its own undoing when there's so much value in a set, when there's a bunch of chase mythics, when there's a bunch of rares. Where look at Dominaria, where it also had the Buddy Lands. It had a bunch of cards that people desperately wanted to get their hands on, and the popularity ends up being the undoing. So anyway, that's kind of my food for thought for this one. Just kind of a short Market Monday. I would not pre-order. I would not buy into War of the Spark. I'd wait till the dust settles, and I would just buy singles after it crashes. And I think, again, we'll see very similar to Dominaria. I think by June, this set is going to be bottomed out. There's going to be a lot of cheap cards. The casuals might hold the price tag for a while. We saw the exact same thing with Dominaria, but eventually the dust will settle, and I think you're going to be able to get on some cheap cards. Now, speaking of like Dominaria, though, there are some good cards that I think are to be had in Dominaria. Like the Helm of the Host and a bunch of other cards. You want to keep your eye on it. There are cards even like the Mending of Dominaria that see a lot of play that are still bulk. And what I like about these sorts of sets is the supply isn't going to have any more resurgence into it. The supply is done. The boxes are sold, the packs are open, and it might be a time period to start investing in Dominaria. So I want to leave everyone with that. I am definitely keeping my eye out on these cards, even commons like Grow from the Ashes, the rares like Cabal Stronghold, Blackblade Reforged, the Mending of Dominaria, Eldritch Reborn, not so much because it's out of a Challenger deck, but many of these cards that are near bulk or bulk prices, I think will look good in a year or two, and where it's pretty safe though, because there's not more supply being injected into this. It's all out on the market, and it's basically rotation will affect some of these that do see some standard play, but for most of these that are just EDH, I think we're going to see very similar to sets of the past like Kaladesh and Aether Revolt. Sets were also opened up like crazy, where you're starting to see $1, $2 uncommons. What was it, the Foundry? Let's look at Kaladesh real quick before we close here. The Aether Revolt and Kaladesh, surprising how fast some of these cards were able to recover because of EDH. And this is the same sort of concept. Like the supply is done with this set, and we're seeing the Felidar Guardians start to go up. This is a bad example with Aether Revolt. Not a lot of them that actually do have value, but we are starting to see some. Actually, this is a weird time to use Goldfish. I think the Crystal Commerce might have gone offline, so everything's crashing right now. But anyway, let's go over to Kaladesh. I remember seeing a few of these cards, and this set just had insane supply, and yeah, Foundry Inspector, $1.18. Simmer's Rejection, Blossom Defense, these type of cards are actually still able to hold value and increase in value. And you see this trajectory is actually starting to go up with Kaladesh. So I think we're going to see the same thing with Dominaria. We're in a time period where I think we're going to have a huge influx of Magic players, and even a set like Dominaria could have a huge opposite of surplus, a huge surplus of players, scarcity, where new players are coming in. Dominaria is something they played with an arena. They pick up those cards for commander, a casual player, or whatever, or even looking to a format that is bridges the gap in between modern and standard. And without any new supply being injected into it, these cards are going to be pretty lucrative to look into it. So again, that's the same sort of concept that I have with Dominaria. I didn't like ever investing in booster boxes for Dominaria because the EV wasn't there. But right now is a great time to get into singles. And I'm going to say the same thing with War of the Spark. Let this dust settle. Let this crash. Let everyone that's hyped up on this just crack box and case after case, box after box, for chasing for these cards. It will indefinitely go down to where I think Dominaria is also situated between probably for Intel rotation about, I would say, anywhere between $60 to $70 a booster box as far as EV is concerned, and that is a very good time to pick up on those singles. Now, of course, there will be some sleepers in this set. I haven't looked over this set too much. We'll have to look at the meta and see exactly what some of these rares, because something's got to give early with the pre-order prices, and something is going to be a sleeper that actually we'll see play out the gates, and especially post-rotation too. That will give a good time for some of these War of the Sparks. But for the vast majority of these that are more casual oriented or look good on paper, they are going to crash unless they absolutely see a lot of play week number 1. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Kind of a short and sweet one this week. This has been Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.